RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation, is all the rage these days, and in this video I want to help you understand why, but more importantly, how to actually use it. So let's start with why. Large language models like ChatGPT are limited by the information they were trained on. What does this mean? Well, if you have some old recipe book that was passed down from generation to generation on handwritten notes, odds are Sam Altman didn't get his little hands on it when he decided to train ChatGPT. So if you wanted to use your grandma's old recipe book in order to come up with recipes for the modern age, you wouldn't be able to do it. In steps RAG, a system that allows you to actually feed your personal information, or in this case we'll call context, your own personal context, to a large language model. So with RAG, we pass in our personal information and we get out answers that are tailored to that personal information. So there's a lot of practical, everyday use cases for a system like this. Maybe you want advice on supplements, so you pass your personal health history to the language model. Maybe you want help getting out of debt, so you pass your past few years of financial information to the language model. Maybe you own a local business and you want a support bot that can actually answer questions based on your FAQs or standard operating procedures. Maybe you just love learning new things and you find that you lose track of that information often and you find yourself relearning information over and over again, and you want a system to better help you wrangle and organize all of that. Maybe you're writing a book and you want all of your outlines, your characters, your ideas, their backstories all in one place so that you can ask questions to it to help flesh out your story even more. Whatever the case might be, I'm going to help you practically build a retrieval augmented generation system with easy, accessible tools that you can get up and running in as little as 30 minutes. Now, before I get started, the last thing I will say is this. Almost every guide out there today focuses on somewhat unhelpful, very abstract problems or technical situations. So in this guide, I wanted to bring this back to reality and talk about a concrete use case that probably every human has to deal with at some time: deciding what to eat. So we're going to build a system that allows us to feed our repository of recipes into a RAG-based system and then ask questions in order to plan ourselves out a meal. So that being said, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to do here is explain the different pieces we've got going on and how they are all going to connect together. So we'll start with the high level, what is what and why is it working the way it's working, and then we'll get into how to configure each step of this process in a very easy way. First thing that we have is our recipes. So I have a folder here with a few different recipes in it, maybe 15, 20 recipes, and I'm going to use this to feed into the system. Okay, so we have our recipes folder, and then what we need to do first is we need to be able to add all of these into our system, we'll call it. Now, the system in this case is what is known as a vector storage, okay? A vector storage. I'm not gonna get into the weeds on what that is. If you're a complete beginner, just know that a vector storage is how an AI can interact with your information. It's a specialized thing. It's got a lot of math going on under the hood. Doesn't really matter for a beginner use case whatsoever. Just know when you hear the term vector storage or a vector database, it's how we can store documents like our recipes into a format that an AI knows how to actually talk to. Basically, that's what it is. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to set up a system that's going to allow us to upload our recipes somewhere and have it get added into this AI readable format. And so the tool that we're going to be using, again, I want something that's super accessible for anyone. And so we have we're going to be using Google Drive, okay? Everybody can access Google Drive. It is free, but this same system that I'm going to break down would theoretically work with any folder-based system where you can upload files and have them stored somewhere. The reason that I'm using this is it works with the tool that I am using, which is N8N. So what do we have? The first thing we have in here, you'll notice, is a trigger. So any N8N workflow needs to be triggered by something. It's a thing that needs to tell it, hey, it's time for you to go do something. And so our trigger here is going to be anytime a file gets created in our Google Drive system. We're going to be using this folder, and I'm going to show you how to configure this in a second. But anytime a file gets created in this folder, it's going to go out, it's going to download the file, and it is going to store it in our AI database. It's going to go out, it's going to store it in there. That's the first piece. The second piece is we're going to create a little chatbot that allows us to ask questions to that database. Okay, so the way that that works is we're going to send a message in, which happens right here inside of our interface. You don't have to go use anything special. We're going to ask a question. The question's going to go out. It's going to ask ChatGPT the question. But what it's going to do, and this might be a little bit different from how you're used to using ChatGPT, is the first thing it's going to do is it's going to actually go out and it is going to retrieve any relevant information from our database. So if we were to ask it, for example, hey, I need recipes and all I have in my fridge is chicken, it's going to go out and it's going to look at all of the recipes that I had in here, and it's going to pull ones that are related to this topic of chicken, right? Because that's what I said in my message. So it's going to go out, it's going to ask that, it's going to retrieve the information, and then what it's going to do is it's going to pass it back to ChatGPT in this case. It's going to pass it back to ChatGPT before ChatGPT goes and generates our answer. So now instead of ChatGPT just going out and finding any recipe having to do with chicken, it's going to specifically say, well, I know that they like this recipe having to do with chicken. They like the proportions of things. They like the directions, like whatever it might be. And then, oh, we also have this chicken orzo soup. So we're going to pull that in as well. So now we're passing our custom recipes into the system, and then we can ask further questions from there. So what we're going to do now is let's actually look at what this system looks like before we get into the details of it from start to finish. And so I already have all of these downloaded to my computer. I'm going to go over to this test folder that we're using here, and I'm going to upload them all into this folder like this. And then what's going to happen is this system is going to run through, and for every single one of those recipes, it is going to store it in our database. Let's let it run that real quick. Okay, so now that we've run through our first embedding, we can go over and now ask questions to this thing. So we can say, for example, what is my soup recipe? Oh, bug. Let me see where this is coming from. Oops. Sorry, I think that was caused by me using a model that is a little too advanced. So if I save this and go back and ask that same question. What is my soup recipe? It's going to go out. It's going to query that database. I don't know why it said, I don't know, but it does have our chicken orzo soup, has the entire recipe in there, also has our chicken tortilla soup in there as well. Even the curry, it's categorizing as a soup. So kind of interesting. All right, so here we are, and we're going to ask a question to this. So just remember, we have all of our recipes now in this that we had from here. They're inside of a vector database, which we're going to show you how to set up in a second. So they're in this vector database, but now we want to be able to ask questions to it. So let's see what an example output might be. I have some chicken that I need to cook. What are some recipes I could use? All right, so it's going out. It understands the question. It goes and asks the database, like, hey, do you have anything related to chicken? And then it passes back, boom. So it gives me my 3 standard recipes, and then it says, hey, you have chickpea curry, which you could also add chicken into, which is pretty cool. So now I can come back here and I could say, I'd like to make an Asian-inspired version of my orzo chicken soup. Okay, so now it's going out. It's understanding what that recipe looked like and what it kind of accomplished and the steps involved and all of that type of stuff. It's taking that full context of that recipe into account, and it's going to make it Asian, right? Then it's going to process my query. And here it returns to us an Asian-inspired orzo chicken soup recipe. So what did they do to change it? Looks like they added some bok choy in. They added soy sauce or tamari, sesame oil, chili paste. They made it like a nice Asian-inspired dish. So this is the type of stuff that we can start doing when we have these vector databases, right? We can come in, we can store our personal information in there, and then we can use the power of these language models to start doing more advanced stuff with it, okay? And now I am going to go back to the beginning inside of the Google Drive, and I'm going to show you, or inside of the embedding, and I'm going to show you how to connect each of these tools in order. Okay, so we have here our Google Drive. We have two nodes. So you'll notice backing up, we have two nodes here. First one says file created. Second one says file updated. Reason that we are doing this is, what if we came into our database here and we updated our chicken fajitas recipe? Well, then we want it to actually take that new recipe into the database. And so we look for two situations. One where the file gets created, two where the file gets changed, basically. So let's look at what this would actually look like if we wanted to add this in. And I will just do this by adding a fresh node in here. So we can come in here, we can say, I need you to add a node, a trigger, and then we come over here, we can type in Google Drive right here on specific changes to a file. Okay, so we need to have our Google Drive account connected. I'm not going to cover that in this video because you can just come through here and do that, or you can even look at, I will actually link, hopefully right up above here somewhere, a video where I show you how to connect this. So if you need to be able to do that, just go hop out and look at that video real quick. I'm not going to bog down this one with that. So we're connected to our Google Drive account. Poll times is saying how often do you want to check for new files having been created. So this is going to be use case dependent. In this case, I'm just going to leave it blank as every minute. And then we want to trigger on changes to a specific file or changes to a specific folder. In this case, since a file is being created, we want to look at changes to a folder, and then we want to see where a file is created in that folder. Okay, then we just come in here and we pick what that folder name was. So mine was called AI Goodies, I think it was. Oh, I think I have the wrong account connected here, actually. It would be this one. Yep, okay, so Goodies. AI Goodies and tests, okay? And then we're gonna look for a file being created, and then we can do a test event, and boom, it's pulling a file that is in that folder for me. That's all you need to do. So now anytime a file gets added into that folder, it is going to be able to pick up on it, boom, and then it sends it to the next step. The next step in this case is just pulling off the ID. So we're just pulling off the ID of the file that we have inside of Google Drive so that we can reference it whenever we need to. And so if you're new to N8N, all you need to do in order to get that to actually work is you can just drag this over. So when you're looking at like the past files that you ran, if you wanted to pull it in here, for example, you just go over here and you'll see that it kind of changes to a little gray background, and you just drag it over. So we're saying, hey, I want you to go and I want you to pull the file ID. I want you to pull the file ID. And so if we test that step, we can see that's what it does. So it goes through, it pulls the file ID, and then it names it file ID. Then we come over here and we go to the Google Drive node. And again, if you want to be able to add this node, you can do that easily by just doing add node, type in Google Drive. Okay, and then you can come over and you can find the one for download file. Okay, let's actually just do this. Let me delete this one so you can see exactly what it looks like. And let me connect this here. Okay, so we're saying download file, open that up. And now instead of from list, we want to say by ID. And this is why we took this ID in here, because we're saying, hey, go download based on this Google Drive account that we're connected to. I want you to go find the file that I'm referencing below, and I want you to download it, and hey, here's the file ID. So we say test step, it's going to go out, it's going to run, and boom, it downloaded that file inside of the system that we have. Now what we're doing here is we're saying, cool, I want you to take the information out of that file. So we add a node for extract from file. You don't even have to touch anything with this one, by the way. It's all automatically configured to pull it all through the right way. So if you were to come through and say test step, boom, it's now extracted everything from that file inside of here. Boom, so we can see it's all loading in here. Now the reason you see this all garbled up like this is because inside of that folder, it's reading one of these Google Doc files. So I uploaded these from a downloaded file. And so when you do that, it uploads them as a Google, sorry, not a Google Doc, a Microsoft Word doc, which is why it has this W. So all of these ones that it's reading as all garbled up, it's because it's got this Microsoft formatting that it doesn't know how to read. So just make sure they're all Google Drive files and you don't have to deal with that. So we extract the information from the file, okay? And then the last stage here, we add a new node. Again, you just go and you add node. And then you would come in here and you just type in vector. And then you can pick out your Pinecone vector store, okay? That's what this one is right here. Now, I will say, by the way, there's other vector storage tools you can use that are supported in here. So you have Zep, Quadrant, Pinecone, Supabase. You could use a basic in-memory vector store, which wouldn't really make sense for what we're doing. You can use Postgres, a lot of different options. I find that Pinecone is super easy and super beginner friendly. So Pinecone is here. You go to pinecone.io, you log in. You can get a free account in here. Let me just log in real quick. Okay, so this is, if you were to just sign up, I just used a dummy account, so this isn't the one that's actually hooked to N8N. But if you came in here, this is what it's going to look like for you. You need to create an index, give the index a name like N8N recipes test, for example. Then you need to configure how it's going to embed the data. Again, not going to get into all the technical stuff on this. Just come here and pick text3 embedding small. So what this is we're using the OpenAI way of generating that embedding. And remember, the embedding is what makes it AI readable. So we're saying, hey, go use the OpenAI version of making it AI readable. And then you just come down here. You don't need to do anything else. Just hit create index, and it is going to go through and it's going to create this for us. So now once we're here, we can go back to our vector storage. And so I could actually just delete that one to show you what this would look like. Delete that too. So I'm going to come through. I'm going to type in vector, pick Pinecone. And then what we want to do, we're going to pick the option for update, even though we're really adding. And the reason for that is that what Pinecone does is it will update it if it already knows it's there. And if it doesn't know it's there, it's going to insert it. So we don't have to worry about managing like updating versus inserting, which is a whole different thing. Just go pick this Pinecone vector. You're going to have to connect your API credentials. So what you do is you go in here, you're going to hit create new credential. It's going to ask for your API key. All you do is you go in here, you click on API keys, create an API key, and then the value that it gives you, you're just going to pull that over here. Pull that over, paste it in, and then boom, you have your thing. We're going to do update docs, Pinecone index. It says from list. So if we click on this, it's going to pull your indexes that you have. So we just created the one in that example, which was called N8N recipes test. Okay. So we would pick N8N recipes test here. And then what is the ID of the file? What is the ID of this embedding? And so what we're going to do is we're just going to use that field that we have here. Boom. You paste it in. Test step. I have something messed up with my API key here. I wouldn't worry about that. So that's the last thing you need to do. We have to pick our embedding. So now you have to say, how is it embedded, right? And this is why we had to choose that OpenAI embedding specifically. So we're telling it, make sure to use the text embedding 3 small, which again was what we configured when we were in here. Remember, we used that and it's saying it right here, the embedding model, text embedding 3 small. Those need to match or else this won't work the right way. So you come through here. That was probably what was causing that error, by the way. And so this entire node should work now. So if you were to go run this now, so it is looking for files created in that folder. It is downloading the file. It's pulling the information out of the file. And then it's saying, hey, go store it in that database for me. Okay, so it runs out and it does all of that. Last step that we have here. Technically, this is an AI agent. Technically. But I mean, it's not doing anything super advanced. It just makes it really easy for us to use the type of workflow that we're going to be using. And so I'm going to show you how this all works right now. So the first thing is our trigger here is a chat message. And so if I was to delete that real quick and just show you, when we add that step and we have our triggers, there's different types of triggers that we can use depending on the use case. We're going to use the chat message trigger. And the reason we're doing that is just for purposes of like us using this, or at least doing this example test. All we need is to be able to talk to it in this thing, right? All we need to do is be able to talk here, and that's what this is. It's just saying, hey, like you can receive chats down here, and whatever you type in, it passes into the system, okay? So let's look at how this thing works. So first thing, we're picking the AI agent node. And again, if you need to add a node, go to add node. If you type in AI agent, you're gonna have this little node right here. That's the one that we're using. A few things here. An AI node needs to be given a chat model, okay? So we added a chat model to this. Again, if I just show you how to do that, we come in here, you can click on that. All you have to do is click on that little thing and pick OpenAI chat model. And then it's gonna ask you to connect with your credentials and what model you wanna use. So in this case, we're using GPT-4 mini, okay? So that's the one that I have connected right here. I'm just gonna reconnect it for simplicity's sake. Right here, okay? So we have our chat model. Then we have a memory, okay? Memory is important for this case because we want it to remember our conversation that we're having back and forth. So we don't want it to be that every time we send a message, it completely forgets what we just said to it. We want it to remember. So if I say, hey, give me all my chicken recipes, and it gives me my chicken recipes, and I say, now make the first recipe Asian, it's not gonna remember what the first recipe is if you don't connect this node. So we're saying, hey, remember our chat conversation, okay? Remember our chat conversation, so we're connecting our memory node. And then we're telling it how many past conversation messages to remember. So in this case, I'm just going to say 10 in case I'm really going back and forth with it. I want to remember everything I said. And then with an AI agent, you can connect any number of tools, okay? Connect any number of tools. And so the tool that we need to connect is that vector storage. So remember, we stored all of these recipes inside of our Pinecone database. Well, we need to be able to tell it to go reference that stuff. And so we add this tool called Answer Questions with the Vector Store. This is, again, a node that is supported here. So if I was to click on Tools and I typed in the word vector, we see this one down here, Vector Store Question Answer Tool. So that's what this is, okay? That's what this is. So if we go and open it up and look at it, we're just giving the data a name. So in this case, N8N. And so what it's going to happen is, and you can read this kind of text here where it says telling you what it does. This will be used to fill this tool's description. Useful for when you need to answer questions about whatever you put in here, right? So we're saying, go reference this data name. I actually named this what the N8N database was. So like anytime you need to go out and do and use this tool, here's a description of what this is. So the user's recipe database. And here's a name for that. And so this is important because this is how the AI tool knows to use this tool. It's going to actually look at this and saying, what does this tool do? Oh, it's the user's recipe database. Yeah, I need a recipe, so let me go there. Okay, and so now it's selected, hey, let me go there. We're telling it the chat model to use to have this conversation, right? So it's gonna actually do its own little back and forth thing here, having its own little chat conversation where it goes out and it looks for the recipes to pull. So it's gonna pass in like, hey, the user needs all his chicken recipes. Okay, processing, the user needs chicken recipes. It's gonna go out, it's gonna query our Pinecone vector database, and it's gonna return the chicken recipes. Okay, returns the chicken recipes. And so when we configure this node, really straightforward. Again, let me just do this. Go to Pinecone. Okay, we connect our account. We want to retrieve documents from the index that we have, which in your case would be that N8N recipes index. Simple as that. Okay, pulls it through, and then you have to tell it what embedding to use. Okay, remember you always have to tell it what embedding to use. So we're telling it it's that what? The text embedding 3 small. Okay, so now this tool can effectively go out, take a user question, and then see if the answer lies somewhere in the vector database. And then it passes it back if it does. And if it doesn't, it just tells the agent like, hey, we didn't have anything here. So now we need to look at what this agent does, because this is really the bulk of this. And so the first thing is we're telling it it's a tools agent, meaning it can go out and you can use tools. And then we're telling it the source for the prompt. So the source for the prompt we're going to define below. The other option is you could give the prompt through the chat node. We're not going to do that. So we're going to say, hey, I'm defining it below. Let's pop open and look at what this looks like. We're saying, you're an expert chef trained in France. You're creative, but believe that simplicity with great technique is what creates amazing dishes. So this is where you're going to start telling the system what you consider to be how you want these recipes done or thought of, or how it needs to respond to you, or anything like that. So we're going to start telling it how it needs to behave. If the user asks a question having to do with recipes, so now we're telling it how to use the tools that we gave it. If the user asks a question having to do with recipes, you always use the vector storage tool to check what recipes they might have that match that query or question. Okay? So we're saying, hey, if they ask you a question about a recipe, I need you to always go check to see if they have a recipe that's related to this. And then we're saying, that being said, here's the user's question. Okay, and then boom, whatever you ask into the chat bubble gets picked. So let's take, for example, we say, hey, I need all my chicken recipes. Okay, it goes and it tells chat, you're an expert chef, blah, blah, blah. And then it's saying, if the user asks a question having to do with a recipe, which it just did, you need to go use the vector storage tool. So now when the chat or any model processes this, it's going to say, hey, users just asked a question about where their chicken recipes are. Go use the vector storage tool and tell me what chicken recipes come back. And boom, the chicken recipes come back. It's like, okay, cool. Now we ask it, hey, make it Asian inspired. It runs this entire thing again. It says, hey, you're an expert chef, that blah, 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 blah. If the user asks you a question having to do with recipes, you always check the vector storage tool to blah, 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 blah. Here's the user question. Make this recipe Asian. Okay. Now, it has the context of the memory. So it passes the memory through to ChatGPT 2. That means it has the past question I asked, hey, what are my chicken recipes? And the response it got, which were the 4 chicken recipes. And so it gives that to ChatGPT, and it also says, hey, here's their new question. So I not only answered this to them last time, but here's what they're asking me now. And so it goes out and it performs all of that, and then it returns to us our end result. Okay, so again, let's just look at this one more time, how it works. What soup recipes do I have? It goes out. It's saying, hey, they're asking about a question. Okay, they asked about a soup recipe. Let me go look in here and see what type of soup recipes they have. And then say chicken tortilla soup, chicken orzo soup, and the chickpea curry. And then we can say, can you make the chicken tortilla soup still Mexican inspired, but use chorizo in it instead? Okay, so now it's going to go out. It's going to say, hey, I just told them that they have these recipes. Okay, now they're asking me about the chicken tortilla soup and if it can be made to use chorizo. Boom, let me pass that recipe back to ChatGPT and then have ChatGPT process all of that information and return us a result. And now it has chorizo tortilla soup. Okay, we're telling us, hey, here's your chorizo, and then here's all of the other things. And I can tell you they did actually change up other elements of this recipe. I might go cook this tonight. So that being said, this is how you can use a basic retrieval augmented generative system in order to use like practical stuff that you have in a way that's meaningful to you. And so you can imagine there's a lot of different ways that you could use something like this. Like I said in the beginning, you could use this to help with financial data, picking stocks that match with your personality or things you care about, helping balance a budget, helping identify subscriptions that you could cancel, helping do all of these different things that are just like grounded, practical ways of using AI in your day-to-day life. Now, if you need any of these, there will be a link to them in the description on this video. And I'd be curious to hear if there are any ways that you'd like to see this type of stuff applied in like a practical way. I can always do kind of more esoteric, abstract, tech-oriented things. But I think, again, the real value of this stuff, especially over the next few years, is going to be bringing these systems into like grounded real-world situations for everyday people or everyday use cases, right? You might be someone that's super technical and super advanced that just like sees this as, wow, this is like a practical way for me to do something. Or maybe you're a complete beginner and this is the first time you're using a RAG system it's like, wow, this stuff's actually like kind of valuable. Whatever the case might be, I hope you found the video helpful. I appreciate feedback on these videos, by the way. I do read all of those comments. So leave a comment on the video below, and I will see you in the next one.